Hello everyone, this is David Larson. I'm the Associate Chair for Performance Improvement in the Department of Radiology at Stanford University, and this is the Radiology Improvement Team Education Program. Our topic for today is learning from the best. We've already talked about developing knowledge through testing, and now I'd like to pause briefly to spend a few minutes and talk about a concept that may seem intuitive, but it's surprising how rare this is done. So let's return to our story in ancient Egypt. You and your colleagues developed a way to get stones up to the top of a ledge. This was a huge improvement and allowed you to accomplish what seemed like an impossible task. By noontime, your team, which is known as the Greystone team, was able to move 5 2.5-ton stones to the top of the ledge, an impressive morning's work. On your way to the meal tent, you passed the Goldstone team. When you'd walked by them in the morning, they hadn't started moving stones at all. But now you see that they have moved 21 stones just in one morning. That's more than 4 times as many stones as you moved in the same amount of time. You wonder, how is this possible? You return to your team and share with them the news. You start a discussion about what your team can do to match that level of performance. The workers point out that they are overwhelmed, and if they simply had more workers, they could match Goldstone's level of output. The overseer expresses his opinion that the workers just need the proper incentives. You point out that you have just as many workers as Goldstone and that they are already working as hard as they can. You suggest that you need to look into changing your processes. The workers highlight the fact that they have already made many adjustments to their processes and, quite frankly, they're experiencing change fatigue. You suggest that since Goldstone seems to have figured something out, that you might be able to learn something from them. This is not a popular idea. The overseer points out that you have already been recognized as the best block movers in the ancient world. One of the workers points out that they are in a completely different environment. They have different resources and a different customer base. Even if Goldstone has figured something out that has worked for them, it couldn't work for you. Another worker suggests that since they're your rivals, they would have some reservations about sharing their secrets with you. Finally, another worker points out all the time that has already been spent on this improvement project and that your team is too busy working to be able to take all this time for so-called improvement. You reply that it couldn't hurt to go talk to them, so you and the overseer go to take a look. Your overseer expresses some skepticism but is willing to give it a try. You arrive at Goldstone, introduce yourselves, thank them for hosting you, and start to inquire as to their processes. Their team leader describes a process that sounds strikingly similar to yours, which is surprising because you thought you came up with that process. Your overseer comments on how similar their process sounds to yours and concludes that your processes are just as good as Goldstone's. You are also glad to hear this, but you think it's a good idea to see the process for yourselves. The Goldstone overseer encourages you to go ahead and take a look at their processes. You observe their process. And while it's true that their process is very similar to yours, your very astute overseer notices a difference. He inquires as to the difference he notices. The Goldstone leader replies that while they use a process very similar to yours, they have adapted it slightly. Instead of using traditional log rollers, they have attached 2 rollers to the sled. They call these rollers wheels. You think they look very funny, but you're willing to give anything a try. The Goldstone overseer points out the realized cost savings, which provides a greater profit margin for the organization. Your overseer seems to respond very favorably to this idea. You ask if they are willing to allow you to replicate their process. The Goldstone overseer graciously encourages you to do so. In fact, he points out that this has already been published, and is a bit surprised that you have not already come across it in your exhaustive background research that you surely must have done prior to your visit. Your overseer suddenly remembers something that needed to be taken care of back on the worksite, and you excuse yourselves. Back at the Greystone site, you replicate their process by attaching these so-called wheels. Your overseer leads everyone in restarting the process. The workers point out a problem in the process. They suggest that something doesn't seem quite right. They also express some skepticism with the process as it has been implemented. The overseer expresses his opinion that the workers just haven't had enough time to become accustomed to the new process. He suggests implementing a new incentive plan. Instead of incentives, you suggest that you make a return visit to the Goldstone team to find out if there's anything else you might learn from them. You return to the Goldstone site. They graciously welcome you back. You explain some of the difficulties you are encountering. The Goldstone team leader offers to take a look at your process changes. You show him the wheel you've developed. The Goldstone team leader takes a look at your wheel and finds a minor omission: bearings. You are not familiar with this seemingly minor difference in your process. You must have overlooked it. The Goldstone team leader explains this minor difference and how it actually makes a big impact, but it's subtle and hard to recognize the difference unless you're looking for it. The team leader points out they had the same trouble you are currently having. It took them months to figure this out and perfect it, but now they're showing it to you for free. You express your admiration and your gratitude, thinking about how many beatings the Goldstone team just saved you and your workers. The Goldstone overseer graciously accepts your gratitude and points out that this detail was included in their publication. He's surprised that you did not come across it in the thorough reading of their manuscript that you must have performed by now. Your overseer again suddenly remembers something that needed to be taken care of back on the worksite, expresses his gratitude, and takes his leave. Back at the Greystone site, you attach bearings to the wheels and give it a go. It works perfectly. Soon you're moving just as much stone per day as the Goldstone group. This is great news for the team, especially the overseer. He now has enough shekels to buy himself that chariot he's always wanted. It turns out that those things also use wheels. Who knew that a tool made for human transportation in warfare could also be used for pyramid building? The overseer is also given a promotion. He uses his new chariot to visit more work sites and inspire even more workers with his persuasive, motivational speaking. In summary, before you spend a ton of time trying to do something that seems new to you, start by doing your due diligence, recognizing that whatever problem you're trying to solve, someone else probably has already solved it, or at least one very similar to the one you're trying to solve. Remember that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Find out who's doing great work and learn from them. Read the literature. Call them. Call a bunch of other places. Go for a visit at the best places. You'll be surprised about how willing people are to show off their own great work to others who express an interest. The great thing about healthcare is that because we generally only compete locally, usually you can find plenty of other people in other geographic markets who would be happy to share their own experience with you. Remember that you don't have to go to another department just like yours. Look at how other departments in your own hospital are tackling a similar problem. It might give you ideas. Look at how similar problems are solved in other settings, or perhaps even in other fields. For example, say you're working on a project to make sure that nobody ever misses their appointment, so that your imaging equipment and your radiologists stay busy. You might start by investigating how other radiology departments tackle this problem. Call around, read the literature, go see some of the most impressive sites. You might look at other departments within your own hospital, or other departments within other hospitals. Getting people in to keep your most expensive resources busy is by no means a problem unique to radiology. You might look at other settings. For example, dentists also need to keep their offices busy. What do they do? You might look at other fields entirely. When airlines fly a plane with empty seats, they lose money. What are some strategies to make sure their planes are filled that you might be able to use? Once you have great ideas from all over, bring them back, test them, perfect them, and build on them. A commonly heard mantra in quality improvement is steal shamelessly. Of course, this doesn't mean to literally steal or to take credit for others' work. It means that you should learn from every possible source. Copying others' ideas in quality improvement is not only allowed, it's encouraged. In fact, I would say it's required. As you do this, you'll find that this will accelerate your work significantly. Don't get caught in the embarrassing situation where you spend weeks and months trying to invent and perfect a new process only to find that the same problem has been solved by others years ago. Do your homework. Go learn from the best. Thank you for your attention today. This is David Larson with the Radiology Improvement Team Education Program.